Conservation Agriculture Studio at Nelson Byrd Woltz Landscape Architects is a highly collaborative design methodology that seeks to lend the skill set of landscape architecture to land in need. We seek to rebuild the compromised, depleted, dilapidated ecological infrastructure in large-scale systems within active farmland. When I finished my graduate studies, studying under Warren Byrd, I realized that agriculture was the largest contributor of non-point source pollution in the United States. How is it that the way we feed ourselves can end up killing us? The toolkit that I had just acquired and was in the process of developing had shown me that landscape architecture is a profession that stands at the intersection of restoration ecology, soil science, horticulture, civil engineering. Could it stand also amidst agriculture? Could these tools be lent to this very important use of land in a way that rebuilds this infrastructure? You can dream all you want, and it remains theory until a highly enlightened client comes along and says, I'm willing to let you experiment with my land. That highly enlightened conservationist is right here in Albemarle County, and we began a project that has lasted for the past 18 years. He allowed us to experiment with his land, to do things we didn't really know how to do, like reestablishing warm season grass meadows. We began with a year of master planning, something I believe in today. This document, along with the subsequent hundreds of pages of drawings of schematic design through design development construction documents, but this document, this master plan, has guided the construction of this property for 18 years. We began with the waterways, rebuilding badly eroded streams and drainage ways, replanting them with marginal species to create habitat for amphibians and reptiles. We started to manage the larger open ground. We replaced the fescue, the non-native thatching grass, with deep-rooted warm season grasses. We reforested the edges. We then said, can we set your farm on fire? And he said, absolutely. So every 3 years, a big puff of dark smoke goes up in Albemarle County, and the ground plane is reset, burning out invasive plants, invasive grasses. You have this kind of sublime result of this blackened landscape that then quickly comes back to life with an incredible biodiversity. This is the composition at the end of summer, this rich bird habitat, small mammal and reptile habitat. So as we worked on this project, we realized we might have not been rigorous enough about documenting, about measuring, about who could be our scientific partners, who could help us gather data that eventually could be shared with people who couldn't hire us or hire scientists. Information that could be shared with extension agents around the country. The work of the studio started to grow in many, many different states and even abroad. One of the fun ramifications of this was neighbors started watching, and another very enlightened neighbor, a writer, poet, an actress nearby, she said, whatever you're over there doing to them, I want you to come do it to me. And so this is her managing her own burn of her native grass meadow. So a pretty exciting positive radiating influence. Now over 2,200 acres of Albemarle County have been managed in this method. We began a relationship much more rigorous with scientists. This has been a game changer for us, working with conservation biologists to give us the data of what are the compromised systems within a piece of property. So what I love is gathering a team of scientists and a team of designers from our office, putting them together, camping on site for a week to learn what are the dynamics of the site, what is compromised. You can't tell a designer from a scientist, and that's a dream come true. This is a white sheet that attracts moths by night, and we count all the insects, amphibians, the native plants and non-native plants. It gives us this baseline data. Then we begin to design with it. About this time, another very enlightened client came along and had acquired a 3,000-acre sheep station in New Zealand, and that's what I want to focus my comments on today. It's on the east coast of the North Island, 3,000-acre sheep, cattle, citrus, and crop farm that had been, as almost all farmland in New Zealand, had been highly compromised over generations of farming practices. This is the site. To those of you who love Bahamian Islands, this is sublime. To somebody who knows the ecology of New Zealand, this is borderline disaster. The native ecology of the North Island is temperate rainforest. Can you see a tree? The erosion was horrifying. The lack of biodiversity, saddening. So we set about a mission of, could we retire the most fragile areas of this farm that should never have been cultivated? I'll show you some of the erosion problems. Some of this land that should never have been cultivated, could we retire that from agricultural production? Could we rebuild the wildlife infrastructure, encourage biodiversity, rebuild parts of the rainforest? This client said, yes, I believe in this, and for the past 12 years, we've been building a model farm for the country of New Zealand that demonstrates best management practices of agriculture with highly researched conservation biology, rebuilding these systems and reweaving them together. This map shows another layer of this project that has been a real game changer for us at Nelson Byrd Woltz. This is the layer of cultural history. The cultural landscape is such a critical thing that remains often invisible, the traces of people who have been on land before you came. In this case, the Maori Great Migration arrived at this property in 1300. In 1769, Captain James Cook arrived at this property, his first landing in New Zealand. It was just north on the bay, not onto this exact land. So what you're seeing are three maps: the cultural landscape, the agricultural landscape, and then the green lines are the reforested landscape, rebuilding wildlife connectivity. But we're using the fragile, erodible slopes, rebuilding wetlands, places that really should never have been farmed. This was my first trip in a fragment of New Zealand rainforest. The scale of the plants is absolutely phenomenal. We created a partnership with the Maori leadership, who have become dear personal friends and tremendous supporters of this work. They really understand it. They see all land as an interconnected living body. And I would say my view of land is more connected to their cosmology than it is to perhaps the ones I've grown up with. This is what timbering in New Zealand did. We built railroad tracks right into the rainforest, put the trees, and hauled them back out. This is what timbering looks like today. The highly erodible volcanic soils dissipate into the ocean. This is the scale of trees we're putting back. One of our partnerships with the Maori, the local Maori tribe, has been to collect seeds in native forest locally, propagate them. They have a small nursery, and then we buy the trees back to plant on the farm. So these go in, and I want you to watch this one cabbage palm that's still on the land. Each one of those white pegs represents a tree, is a stake for one of our trees. So far to date, we've planted 600,000 rainforest trees on this property. So I'm just going to pull back. You might want to grab your armrests so you start to get a sense of the scale of these plantings. We're reforesting the entire coastal edge so that this property will look as it did when James Cook landed in 1769. The wetlands, they'd all been drained to maximize grazing land. So we thought, let's rebuild them, but let's not pretend and naturalize them. Let's actually build them as a living, visible painting. Let's be artists here, but let's work closely with the conservation biologists and scientists to know exactly what we're putting back. So the ecological services remain, but that this is a visible, designed construction, a kind of living painting, if you will. These are the grading plans, 2 kilometers of river, of deep water, and then 14 islands of varying slopes planted with different native species to become the homes of many of the flightless birds native only to New Zealand. We took inspiration from paintings by Roberto Burle Marx, a landscape architect from the 1960s, Brazilian, who was also a great painter. These are natural forms, but they're abstracted, so this was our inspiration. This was the construction site that lasted for nearly 3 years, 75 acres of constructed wetlands, where wetlands had once been 100 years ago. And this is the result. We have this spectacular broad landscape of freshwater wetlands and salt marsh. These are the pre-treatment swales that gather hundreds of acres of fresh water, filter them with plants, and then hold them in this wetland that is now filled with native birds. We also rearranged the agricultural lands of the farm. This is a citrus production, and you'll see we've reforested the edge, again with small trees, used instead of nylon screens, used trees shorn into shelter belts to protect the citrus from freezing. And then in honor again to this cultural landscape, to the Maori traces, in the distance in this image you're seeing Mount Taranaki, a very sacred site to the Ngāti the local tribe that we've been working with for so long. This bridge is on axis with the peak of that mountain. So every day the farmers, the workers, as they cross this bridge, they have this kind of moment of homage to a sacred site for the Maori. The Maori have a long tradition of earth mounding and earth building, fortifications, settlement sites, food storage. These are some of the traces that remain. This is a kumara pit. Kumara was a vegetable that the Maori cultivated from 1300 to today. These pits are dug out into the clay, lined with leaves, filled with food, and then arches of branches and leaves over to cover it from the wet weather. We wanted to honor these traces, honor these traditions amidst the farmland. As we're rebuilding ecologies, let's rebuild a respect for these valuable cultures that are nearly invisible. In this slide, we've oriented the drives between the citrus production and these high sheared hedges as an homage to a 300-year-old burial site. This is a cemetery in the midst of the farm that we wanted to honor. The Maori actually commissioned us to do this work. To be a white person from overseas, asked to work with them, was a deeply emotional connection that we had with this tribe. You can see this axial relationship to this burial mound has now been brought into honor instead of being back of house. We then worked with them to ask, how can we respectfully honor this tradition and demonstrate this tradition in the midst of the gardens around the farmhouse? And so this developed as an homage to the Maori culture of earth mounding, this terraced and abstracted landscape. This wasn't a quotation of their traditions. It's rather, how do we work with them and be inspired by this and honor it in a new way for a new generation in the future? Perhaps the most ambitious part of the work at this farm was highly aspirational project. Could we rebuild an ecology so stable, so rich, and so safe that we could reintroduce the tuatara, which is one of the most endangered animals on the planet? It's the last descendant of the sphenodont family, which for the scientists in the room, that is the dinosaur family. These animals are highly compromised. It takes a year to gestate an egg, and we thought 9 months was bad. They're very vulnerable to the pests that have been introduced to New Zealand. New Zealand has no native mammals. Think about it. No lions, bears, tigers, stoats, weasels, cats, dogs, or people. So this amazing landmass evolved without humans and without mammals. So birds diversified to fill the niches. They also lost the ability to fly. They didn't need to. No predators. So we thought, with this massive team, not only do I have 40 creative, devoted, passionate people at Nelson Byrd Woltz that work with me, but then we have hundreds of ornithologists, biologists, conservation biologists. They are our partners so deeply, but we also have these cultural geographers, archaeologists, anthropologists. So with this huge team, mostly led by Steve Sawyer, a conservation biologist in New Zealand, we set about this ambitious goal. Could we reintroduce the tuatara? And again, without an enlightened client, this would not have happened. So, first step, build a predator-proof enclosure so that the weasels, stoats, possums won't eat the eggs. You'll see here there's a wire mesh, comes down, comes forward a meter just underground. Life lesson, when you get to the barrier and you dig and you dig and you dig, maybe you should back up a little bit, go under. Fortunately, they don't know that. Don't tell any mammals you know that trick. It looks like these gentlemen are straight ahead of me. You can see there's water in the distance, but this is actually where they're working. So you can draw it on paper, but these guys are the ones who built it. That's why I say the credit goes to others in all of this work. So with the predator-proof enclosure, you can see we reforested inside 80,000 trees to rebuild the rainforest inside this enclosure. We had to prove to the Department of Conservation we had a safe and stable habitat. Now the tuatara lives in a symbiotic relationship with the sooty petrels, gray-faced petrels, and fluttering shearwaters. Seabirds that had not been seen on this shore for 100 years. How do we start? How do we rebuild this ecology? We had to prove that we had 3 cycles of these seabirds nesting on the peninsula before the Department of Conservation and the Maori would release tuatara into our care. This fence was inspired by Christo. I have to say, we call it our Ecocristo, the running fence project he did in Sonoma, but it's in service to a greater ecology. So again, trying to be artful with these ecological measures. These are the heroes also of this project. These are the conservation biologists that come and measure, collect data, are checking ink pad traps where critters can walk across and you can see their footprints if there are any. Fortunately, we have clean papers, and we are predator free within the enclosure. This is our target species, and that is a petrel in its burrow. They dig these 8-inch deep burrows, and that's what turns on a tuatara to lay an egg. So we needed some burrows. Steve Sawyer, our ornithologist and conservation biologist, had this brilliant idea, first time it's ever been done, using solar collectors to power speakers, outdoor speakers. That's what you're seeing in the distance there. And he made a CD of gannets, petrels, fluttering shearwaters. If you ever need to gaslight someone and drive them absolutely insane, I'll give you a copy of the CD. So every evening around cocktail time, the CD starts to play thanks to the solar collector, and these seabirds way off in the distance over the Pacific start to circle in, and they've started to land. He has pulled off a world's first of using these devices to attract seabirds. We now have the first new gannet colony established in the world. We have repeat pairs of fluttering shearwaters. Their numbers were reduced to 1,000 globally. This is Steve with, with a petrel that's landed on his lap. They have no fear, and no wonder they're extinct. And this is the moment that just catches your heart, where you're seeing barren, eroded land that I showed you in the early slides, covered with rainforest species, and these beautiful seabirds coming in for the night of a safe night's sleep. I'm happy to report that last year, 62 tuatara were delivered from the Department of Conservation and the Maori tribes into the enclosure, and they are absolutely thriving. This has been a 12-year journey of rebuilding this very fragile ecology, really from zero. I end with this picture because I feel like it's a way to say this image of the ocean, where we've now have blue penguins nesting in boxes. To the right is the tuatara enclosure. In the distance are the constructed wetlands, and all along the shore is the edge replanted. And in the distance, you're seeing sheep grazing land, rotational grazing, that has greatly reduced the impact on this land. This is where landscape architecture stands, at the intersection, civil engineering, horticulture, conservation biology, and agriculture. Thank you for your time.